Well, here again. Tonight, I kind of want us to get into a discussion, just talk about a few things. We kind of sort of hit on them a little bit last week, but a question was posed to us: what is the difference of what we're saying and what the church world says, the world of religion? And one of the things that stood out to me was the absence of questions in religion. I know from a few years of background in religion, I would like to ask our studio in Florida to refrain from belching because we can hear you.
Is that what that was? I couldn't do.
It's all the wine and cheese.
Yeah. Anyway, in church, from my experience in a religious background, we're taught to just kind of take what the preacher says and not to question. I mean, I'm sure a few questions are allowed if you're the right person, but for the most part, the audience is supposed to sit and listen. There's not much dialogue going on in those settings. And I guess my question is, how do you get to know somebody? How do you get to know about anything in particular if there's no question involved? You know, if I want to get to know this individual sitting here, my wife, the best way for me to get to know her is to have an open dialogue, question, of conversation. And without it, I wouldn't, if I just asked her to observe me and get to know me that way, or better yet, observe the way other people try to represent me, she probably wouldn't have fallen in love with me. Just because it's very difficult to get to know somebody that way. So there's in my mind, a huge difference in what we're doing here is we want involvement, we want participation, we like to hear other people speak. I don't know, that's just my opinion on things.
Yeah, that'd be a little creepy, if when we first met, you told me, I want a relationship with you, but don't ask me any questions.
Right.
I would have probably not taken the chance to get to know you had that been the stipulation. Had I thought that you were off limits, that I couldn't know anything about you. So yeah, that would be kind of weird.
Right. That's the way that the church world represents God. He's, who are you to question him? And I think the Old Testament even says that somewhere. Who are you, oh man, to question me? But that's terrible. If I told my kids, don't question me, just do what I say, or do what someone else is telling you that I say, how does that translate to them? How do they learn anything from that? To me, it just causes confusion, and apparently that's where we are today in the church world. Is there's just so much confusion going on. I mean, we brought this up too. There's 40,000 different denominations, and I know that didn't come from people having an open discussion, a dialogue about their differences and trying to get to the bottom, and it definitely didn't come from someone in the position of being a translator or a scholar, somebody with education. It just came from a bunch of people saying, well, I have an opinion, you can listen to me, or not. If not, go somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, nowhere in life do you go where that's an issue. You think about going to work. When you show up on the job and there's some training involved, there's a lot of questions, a lot of things that need to be kind of talked out. I mean, I know when you first started working, I mean, you've dealt with every asset of that store, or every facet of the store. And you didn't do that by just saying, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, there had to be some explanation. And so nowhere in life, I mean, our 5-year-old, I mean, how many questions is he full of every day? Thousands.
Right. I think what we're getting at here is that in every other aspect in life, questions are encouraged. We're in college, And all of our professors have said the only, how do they say it? The only, the dumbest question is the one that's not asked. I know I'm not phrasing it right,
I've
but
heard that.
the point is they want us to ask questions. They encourage them. In our anatomy and physiology class, he told us, I don't care what I'm saying. If you're not getting it, he has an accent. So he says, English is not my first language, and he is a little difficult to understand, but he said the only way you're going to fail in this class is if you don't ask questions. If I'm saying something and you don't understand it, interrupt me. Ask the question. When I'm training at work, when I have new hires, I encourage that. If they don't understand something, I don't want them messing up the computers. I don't want them messing up their orders. I want them to ask questions and get things right. And that's the only way that we're going to get anywhere in this movement and on this journey that we're on right now, is if we question. If there's something that we don't understand, and that goes for everybody, the ones sitting at this table, the ones at the studio in Florida, on the other shows, and our audience members, the viewers. Ask questions. If you don't understand something, ask, because we're here to get to know each other. We're here to move forward with one another. And the only way we're going to do that is what we're doing right now, having an open dialogue, an open discussion, laying things out on the table. That's one of the biggest things I appreciate about where we are right now on the place. Right after us, we're going to have an atheist on. He's on every week, and he has a lot of different views than we do. But I appreciate every one of them because it causes me to think. It causes me to question. It kind of keeps me in check, saying, do I know, or do I really know what I think I know? I need to get down to some more facts. So, I don't know. It's just a nice place to be.
Well, I was thinking when you were talking, I know I've said this more than once, most likely on the show, but my policy as a parent used to be, don't ask questions. Just do what I say. So. Yeah, that's it. That's all you need. Yeah. And, when I look back on that, I think what a horrible way to raise children, And if I had it to do it again, I know I would do it differently. But I will say that I'm very thankful for, what I've been able to realize, recognize, and really the most valuable thing that I have, as far as I'm concerned, is the realization, the ability to grow, to change my mind. I'm not stuck any longer in a way of thinking. And the more I come out of that, and it's not to say that I've fully matured. That's an easy thing to determine. I feel like I've got a lot to learn, like maybe I've just gotten started, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, it's wonderful. Now, I think I made the statement, or I did make the statement to someone recently, that I feel like one who's in their late 50s who has the development of a 15-year-old. And it's because, and that's an exaggeration, probably a little bit of hyperbole, But the thing is, there's a huge chunk of my life kind of taken out of the middle that was basically, and just in all honesty, given to religion. I had my religious beliefs. And for the most part, they were set in stone. And, you figure you have that's what's important in life. Nothing else really matters. And when I look back on that, I think, what kind of potential might I have had if it hadn't been for that? Because, there is a philosophy, there's a theology out there. And this is the one that probably had me or caused me more stunting of my growth than any other thing. And that is that, you've got the kingdom of God, and then you've got the world and its ways and all of its attractions. And if you go that route, you're going to miss God. And so you take this basically little set of rules or do's and don'ts, and Figure if I do these things, God will be pleased with me. I'll make heaven. I've got the most important thing covered, so none of this other stuff matters. But, and really that could be cause for, someone my age and that has missed a lot of years in that respect to be bitter or to be angry because, that's just not fair. But I don't look at it that way at all. I look at it as a wonderful thing to have come into. I know a lot of people that still can't do what you were just talking about. Ask questions, think, and be able to grow and get past a book of superstition. I can look at this thing honestly now, and I put it on the table, I guess, mainly for that reason.
I was wondering that.
Yeah. Well, it's mainly to say, hey, I'm not angry at you. You didn't do anything to me, but someone did. Someone way back probably, started this ball rolling of this is sacred. It's inerrant, beginning to end. It's God's word, and that's all you need. And to be truthful, nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
It has some wonderful things in it, and the more it's they're stated accurately by someone who's qualified to go there and determine what it said originally, the more value it actually has in certain aspects. But it's not what we need to live by. It's not what needs to govern our lives. The one thing that I think we can get from this is that, God is in each and every one of us. Christ is in us. And so we have someone to follow. We have something to follow. And by asking these questions and getting to know, just like the two of you got to know each other. And I know a lot about that, and that's kind of nice. I know that when y'all got together, Stephen, you used to come and talk to me and say, we have... Uh-oh.
I'm kidding.
You're telling them that.
Oh, this is good stuff. This isn't bad. But you would say that, y'all really had strong feelings for one another. You cared a lot. I mean, really, I think you were trying to be as honest as you could. You felt like it was love, that y'all were in love with each other. But there was a huge difference, religiously speaking. And I like to use that term because, we've all had our religion, and most of it was the Christian religion.
Right.
But then you got to determine what brand, and the brands that you had were far apart.
Yeah.
And really, Stephen was in a position where he could grow. And I think I've heard you testify or make the statement that you were actually growing. There was things that you couldn't argue with that were real. But it was just so hard to give it up. And hopefully we can all identify with that. Yeah. I mean, we get stuck in our way of thinking. All of us do. But like I said, the greatest thing that we have is the ability to change our minds. And I may say something, and some people are afraid of this. I'm not. Maybe I'm just the bull in the china closet. I don't know. But afraid to say something this week that you might have to go back next week and say, well, I was wrong about that.
We've done that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to be able to do,
One thing that I appreciate about our journey is that I still feel like I was in the beginning stages of mine whenever she came along. And I think the advantage, though, like you said, was that we were more into an open dialogue, in a questioning phase. So whenever we did get together, we got married, we just kind of continued the growth process together. And that, to me, has helped me out tremendously because sometimes I'm slow. I have to be honest. I'm slow at understanding things occasionally.
You get that
maybe
from
not
me.
even occasionally, maybe most of the time. But she's quick. And she's helped me through a lot of areas
Is that true?
to get past. You can say it. You can
I think
say
it is.
It is true. She's quicker
won't
in
argue
a lot
it.
of areas than I am, and so
I think naturally, I'm just maybe a little more objective, but I think that you've grown into that though. You're not the same. You don't look at things the same way that you did, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You don't process things the way you used to. And so
I think my processor was broken, or just
yeah.
hadn't learned how to use it.
Yeah.
Just hadn't got it kick-started yet.
Yeah.
But I think that mine was brought alive. Maybe I haven't even thought of this way all my life. I think I've always been an analyzer, but
She's very analytical.
Hey, that's good.
But that's really what's maybe that characteristic has helped me a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. It's kind of on the subject of what we're talking about, or what you were saying a while ago. One thing that I've noticed through this process, on this journey, as the religion has fallen away, as we grow, I mean, we're adults here. It's kind of time that we start taking responsibility for our actions and for our growth. Religion, we always had all these avenues to blame it on someone else or something else. Well, religion has made me this way, the pastor has made me this way, my parents have made me this way, the Bible has made me this way, the devil, God, we had all these avenues.
The devil.
Yes. Yeah, the devil being the biggest one.
That was the number one spot.
As all these things fall away, it just falls down to us now. We're responsible for our growth. We're responsible for moving forward. We can become lazy. We still have, I'm not saying we don't need teachers. I mean, without teachers, we wouldn't grow. We can't learn on our own. But we have the responsibility to not sit here and be lazy.
Yeah.
We can sit under a teacher and hold our ears, or twiddle our thumbs or whatever, but it's up to us. There is no one else to blame anymore.
You make a good point, because we're in a intense class this semester, and the teacher is going to do everything he can do to deliver the information, but ultimately it's up to our understanding of it and how we take it in and study and know that to be true. And so, that is up to us, whether we pass that class. And so I think it does compare to this. We are responsible in a sense. We can't pass the blame to...
We can't blame it on anything else
things.
anymore. We've come too far.
Right.
It's our fault now, It's our responsibility. If we want to move forward, we have to move forward.
We have to pick up our feet.
Well, there is a coming out, so to speak. There's a liberating that takes place, and that's another wonderful aspect to me of going back to the differences. The difference of being a church person. It's one who goes and basically, kind of like the mama bird does to her little babies. She brings the food and drops it in their mouths, and you go and you get it dropped in your mouth, and you just go ahead and swallow it. And I think the difference that y'all were talking about, being slower or faster, that's just one of the many variations among people. And I was talking to someone earlier about the rescue mission that Paul talked about in the book of Galatians. He said, if you're mature, if someone's trapped in a sin and you're mature, you can gently restore such a person. Go after and try to restore them. But obviously, he understood something about the growth process, that you have to get to a certain point before you can do that. But also, you find in that scenario that there are those who need rescuing. There's those who are trapped. And the sin in the context basically is this religious mindset, because that's where he was. That's what he had come out of. And what he was battling there was those who were trying to take the ones he had taught and plug this Old Testament idea, these old ideas about God, into what they had received and trap them. And that's why I wanted to go there with that, because I think so many are trapped in that sense. But once we get out of that trap, I think that's where you were in reference to. We get beyond that which ensnared us, and then we become responsible. Mm-hmm. We can stand on our own 2 feet and say, Okay, now I understand something. And I think a major thing to consider is the quenching or the grieving of the Spirit, to put it in English Bible terms. But
Christianese, is that
right, right. In the past, what I thought was, I was being like God or I was doing the right thing, a lot of times was what is in the category of that sinfulness, really. It's that religious mindset. One thing, for example, all this exclusion that goes on. And this is another big difference between church and what we've come to realize. And that makes us say, we don't want to be a part of that. We don't want to be called that. Because if someone doesn't meet the criteria of your particular brand or your particular religious mindset, there's this, shove them away and have nothing to do with them and treat them, basically like they don't exist. I mean, there's so much of that. And of course, that develops into stronger and stronger things till countries go to war with each other. And I mean, I think it's the cause of a lot of our problems in the world. And so, but back to the idea that we're talking about, once you come out of that and you can see it for what it is, you become so much more inclusive. Mm-hmm. And that's just one example of the things where at the one time, using myself for example, I used to think, well, this is a good thing. I'm doing what, I'm obeying God. I'm in the Spirit, whatever you want to call it. Whereas really what I was doing was resisting. And I just didn't know it. But now I know it and I can identify it and I can make the choice and I'm the responsible one.
Right.
So
something else, this kind of goes into what Dr. Jones was talking about this morning, getting away from the Christianese, the terminology that the church uses. One of the things that he stated this morning is that, there is no sinful nature. And one thing that I can appreciate about the direction that we're going in school, we're going into the medical field, and we've had very little, or we've only had one class, hadn't we? And of that actually goes towards our studies. But I like being able to use the terminology that we're learning, and it applies here. I feel because Jesus talked about himself being a physician. He came to heal the sick, and I like replacing the term sin with sick. It just makes so much more sense to me. Sin and sinful nature makes me sound schizophrenic. I've got multiple personalities or something. I've got a bad side and a good side, and I guess you can look at things that way, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I have problems. I have sicknesses that need to be healed, that need to be dealt with, and I think we're we're on a good path that's helping me get rid of those sicknesses that mainly religion caused.
I'm glad you're saying that because, I use the term sin and in what I was just saying. But I think there is this is something else Dr. Jones was talking about this morning, the metaphor that he's used for years. And I can see that method of teaching where you show forth something that should seem so exaggerated in our minds. It should actually conflict with our thoughts. And there's where the question should come in. Just for example, something that, by the way, I miss your mom being here today. Yeah. But I'm sure she'll be back next time. We've saved a place for her. But we were talking earlier, and I hope I haven't lost my train of thought. I get to thinking about her, and that's it, What were we talking about here?
Sin and the terminology.
Well, just
I
the
can't
method
wait
of
to get old.
teaching. Where you? Yeah, really, it's fun. You got you see, you do get an excuse.
That's true.
All right, come on, don't lose it again.
Yeah, right. Using certain, throwing things out there that should cause us to say, well, for example, should ask the question, is God really like that? I mean, how many times do we use that whenever you want to try to get people at least to question the idea of hell? Someone who has just heard all their life, believed all their life that there's a hell, and if you don't do certain things, you will go there. And I'm talking about the literal eternal place of torture. And just to throw it out there, to say, God is love and He's all these wonderful things, and He's so much better than we are, and His ways are so much higher than ours. But for some reason or another, He created a place to torture. It's where He could, supposedly He's everywhere at all times. So He will be there hearing these screams and cries of pain. What about that does something for Him? What kind of God could this really be?
That goes back to what we began with, the questions. People aren't allowed to go there in their minds. And even when you present these questions, I know there's got to be alarms going off in their head.
Sure.
But they're fearful. They're like, I can't go there. They have a restriction on them.
There's a lot of superstition involved that we don't want to admit. But, hello.
Was that directed at us? I apologize. I'm not sure
We're
if
hearing
the Florida
voices.
studio is trying to communicate with us.
It was
or
not directed at you. That sound was not supposed to come to you. This is Joey, your producer. Just carry on. Also, sorry about the sound earlier. Matt did that. He did not have permission, and we don't like him very much for doing that.
Oh,
Okay.
We were hoping it was okay because we were going to start doing that.
Anyway, I don't mean to hear every little noise and jump
For
over
just
to
a
that,
minute,
but
we
it's
thought
just-
God was speaking to us.
I just know last week when we heard a voice, it really was meant for us. So
Yeah.
I don't want to ignore the Florida studio.
Well, it's just good to know that they're there and that they're listening.
Yeah, and then they're not drunk. I mean, maybe,
They might be. That
maybe
wine-
that's what it is.
But not on wine, as you may suppose.
One of the terms that I guess if you want to call it Christianese or not, we talked a little bit about it last week, was the term love and its overuse. I don't know of a term that's synonymous. I mean, I don't know if we can actually find a word that would replace the word love.
Is that necessary?
Huh?
Is that necessary?
I don't think so. I think that we can still talk about love, but I think it does need to be qualified. It needs to be followed up with what is it we're talking about, because that term is thrown around so much in the church world today. I don't want to be associated with that type of love, because that has to do with everything that we've been talking about that's negative today. Church folks say, "Oh, well, I love you," and I'm sure they do to a certain extent. But in their mind, they're thinking, "I love you like my idea of the way God loves me," which is, I like you for a little bit, but if you screw up, you may burn.
And I couldn't have loved you at all if I hadn't have done something to provide a way for me to be able to show you my love.
Right. I mean, it's like it excludes everything about love: the patience, the kindness, the long-suffering, just everything. Everything goes out the window, and so you're left with just a term. And I could really appreciate what my wife was saying last week about it.
Hey guys,
Is this really meant for us?
This is really meant for you. This is Joey again, your producer. Just wanted you to know who it was. Listen, do you guys take unscheduled guests? I don't know.
We did last week. I suppose we could again.
We can only do that once a month, maybe
Once a
one
month?
kid. We'll take another one.
Okay. Well, do you guys take do you guys do like rollover minutes where if we didn't do a special guest last month, we can have two this month?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll
Okay.
read it.
Well, this special guest is different than the last special guest. He has a hat on. It is the same person, but he has a hat on this time.
Okay.
Dr. Michael W. Jones wants to talk to you guys. He wants to jump in the conversation. Let's bring him on.
Hello,
Come on
Dr.
in.
Jones with the hat on.
Well, thank you. I've got several curiosity questions. Number one, I've been listening to your show since the beginning. I think the start was powerful. I compliment the background, the new set, all of that. It's wonderful. I've been really enjoying the entire program.
Thank you.
I wanted to
Thank you very
jump in simply because you guys are talking about something that's extremely meaningful, and that would be love. And I agree with Nicole. It's really not necessary to change the word up. But, you know, the Apostle Paul, one of the things that we need to applaud in his life is he chose to say, I don't have to say God all the time. I can say God is kind, but I can also say love is kind. And I guess the reason that I wanted to jump in, why can't we say, instead of always talking about love, 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 why can't we say, if Paul was willing to say God is kind, patient, doesn't keep a record of wrongs, if he was willing to say love is kind, patient, doesn't keep a record of wrongs, why can't we say Stephen is kind, patient, and he doesn't keep a record of wrongs? Sometimes I think that most of our kids, most of our friends pay more attention to us than they do these terms, if that makes sense.
Right. That's the point. That's the direction I was headed with the qualification of the term. I think that term has to be qualified with action. How can I say I love anything or anybody if I don't express that? If I'm not expressing anything towards my kids, I shouldn't have the right to tell them that I love them. And the same thing, you know, towards my wife. Excuse me, my wife. If I could say I love you, I love you, I love you, and she'd probably slap me in the face if I said it enough times. Just getting tired of hearing the term. If there is nothing to follow that up, if I'm not expressing it, if I'm not being patient, if I'm not being kind, if I'm not doing everything else that goes along with saying that word.
What would happen at First Baptist Church or First Pentecostal Church if you talked not about God, not about love, but how great Daryl is?
They have a special day usually once every 6 months or so called Pastor Appreciation Day, but other than that, you better be talking about God.
Okay, I understand that, but my point is, if we, as a people, believers and non-believers, if we did have days that we came together and people started teaching, for instance, about Gandhi. Let's talk about how wonderful he is. Most theists in Christianity don't want to admit that Gandhi was, you know, he's this wonderful person. There's
I was
something
talking about him this morning.
you know, there's just something about taking the Beatles, for instance, the song Imagine. Christians, for the most part, not all, thankfully, but most Christians really bashed the Beatles when they were saying something extremely good. And there's something really sensible about giving credit to people who are doing good. And so whether it be Daryl or Stephen or Nicole or your children or your friends, it seems like it would be better to spend some time talking about them to get a better reflection of what good is. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. You know, for so long we've focused on something that's non-existent. At least the way we thought of him. You know, everything was about God, but the God we were focused on doesn't exist. And the one that we need to get to know is right here around us, you know,
Yeah.
right here in
Really?
my wife, right here in my dad. And if we can't learn to relate here, then we've missed the point.
Yeah, the only kind of love I know is the love that I experience in my life with people, you know, that are here. So
So you're saying that the people you are connecting to possibly would influence others more than talking about God or just the term, correct?
I think that's the only influence because, words on a page doesn't make it happen and doesn't make it real for us. I think the only way we can understand love is our experience of it. So,
yeah, I completely agree with you. Why is it difficult for most Christians to leave the Bible? And I'm not talking about saying the Bible is just not worth reading. I think that the Bible, like all books, it's worth reading A to Z. But why can't we leave a lot of the ancients as simply people of ancient times speaking about their own perspectives concerning God? Why can't we leave that and start talking about what's going on today, about problems, about good things, various things that are going on today? Why can't we leave the ancient world and be more reasonable?
Well, to me, it started off with what was considered to be the church, or, I'm not a history expert by any means, but just from what I understand to be true, that with Catholicism, it become a dangerous thing to question anything about that, and it was represented by the Bible for a number of years, and then Protestantism has done the same thing, basically followed in the same path, and anywhere from being ostracized to being killed was the penalty. But I think the real fear of leaving it comes in, we think that it represents God, and we've been taught that for so many years. And as I stated earlier, I think there's more superstition than anything else. Some people are afraid to go under a ladder or cross in front of a black cat. But much worse than that would be to question this thing, to say that it's not true from beginning to end in God's Word. A lot of fear, I think, would be the greatest factor.
Let's talk about fear for a few minutes. What are people afraid of? Why are they afraid of moving forward? And the reason that I bring that up, it seems like we get a lot of reaction. I can say something and wow, we get a lot of reaction. And people make decisions to be around us. People make decisions to not be around us. Why are people afraid of being authentic? That is, completely transparent with their family, friends, people around them at work. What goes on in the mind of a person that doesn't want to be transparent? What's the fear? Or maybe it's not fear. What is it?
I would say two things. Number one, for lack of a better way to put it, the fear of God, the fear that He'll turn against them because of what they've come to believe to be true in their minds. The other thing is, most people, not all, but I think the majority of people don't like to be disliked. They don't want their families to cut them off, to turn against them, and in some cases, the possibility of a spouse leaving them or their children having nothing to do with them. And these are not unsubstantiated fears. This happens all the time, and I know you're quite aware of this. And I don't think that any of us find that to be pleasurable. But it comes along a lot of times with just questioning, because we are in a very religious world. We're in a religious society, and people are just more prone to go that direction, or have been. And it's fear. I'm not saying that it's justified, but it is. It does happen a lot. Now, we know it doesn't happen with God. He's not against us for, thinking and getting to know Him as He really is. But getting other people to see that's another story.
Well, one thing from my personal experience, I know we've talked about this before, but we have a lot of family that is pretty steeped in religion, and we had a lot of issues, when we started becoming more vocal with where we stand and being a part of the New Covenant group and started supporting. I mean, we've always supported, but I mean, online, Facebook, open conversations, we experienced tons of rejection. People that you think, oh, they're family, they're friends, they'll understand. They don't. And I don't understand their fear, because as long as they have known me, they know that I'm a gentle person. I'm not really into confrontation.
Stephen is kind.
But for some reason, I have scared them away by even just my gentle nature. I don't know. And slowly but surely, they've started to realize that I'm still the same person, in the sense that I'm still gentle, I'm still kind, I'm not malicious, I'm not out to get them. I'm not even out to, I'm not trying to fit them into any type of mold or anything. I want them to be free in their mind. I want them to think. I want them to be able to question things that they've never been able to question before. And am I the best in the world at that? Probably not, but I'm working on it. But the goal is still that. I want them to see what I see. Of course, people that you've been around all your life, that you have, I won't say wonderful relationships with, because apparently it's not all that wonderful if they're going to react the way they do. Apparently I didn't know them as well as I thought I did, but I haven't changed. I'm still here. I'm still, I say I haven't changed, but I mean, as a friendly person, I haven't changed. My philosophy has changed, but I'm still vocal. I'm still there. I'm still standing where I feel like I need to stand. And for the most part, they keep their distance. They stay away. But when they come around, I'll be ready.
Nicole, what keeps people from being transparent, completely transparent?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I agree with everybody else. For me personally, there was a time where I felt like I didn't understand things enough to be transparent with people without them coming at me with something that I couldn't rebuttal. And so that was my fear in the beginning. Now, everybody I know, in a close way, pretty much knows what I'm about. Some of them decided to leave, and some of them are sticking it out with me, and I'm appreciative to those people that still want to hang out and still want to hear it.
And I can vouch for it's very few.
It is very few.
Down to the one hand.
I am
Down to the one hand.
I'm down to half a hand probably of really just close friends that can appreciate who I am and where I gather where I come from, and they actually see that it is because of my knowledge of God that enhances who I am. And so I think in the beginning, to answer your question, it was just lack of knowledge. I couldn't go full circle with people, and so I was not transparent.
Let me ask you another question. Both you and Stephen are in college. We're so proud of that. You guys have no problems at all being transparent about the science that you're studying, correct? In school?
Right.
As long as I know it.
Okay, well, even if you don't know it, if you say, wow, the professor dealt with this today, it's really superfluous as to whether people accept it or not. It's just what you're going through. And it's not really whether you're agreeing with Professor A or B or C. It's just about you're going through the process right now. And I can assure you that your mind will continue to change the more that you study science and other disciplines. I guess my point is, it's easy in the context of college to share with your friends, this is what I'm learning. I don't know if it's right or what. People don't mind talking about that. But when it comes to talking about God, that's the sacred cow. That's where everyone gets upset.
Well, yeah, I was going to agree with you there for sure. It's definitely a much more sensitive. I mean, we could talk about anything in the world pretty much with friends. When it comes to religion, it is extremely sensitive for them. It used to be for me, but now I feel like with anything else, I'm open to talk to anybody and express exactly where I stand. But
Can I interrupt you, Stephen?
Sure.
Okay. Are you suggesting that theology is an irritant or God is an irritant?
I'm sorry?
Are you suggesting that theology or God is irritating to people?
Possibly the views that we have.
Any contradictory conversation, anything that contradicts the God that they know.
So you're saying that we can talk about all kinds of subjects, and certain subjects are not irritating to people, correct?
Right.
But when it comes to the subject God, that is, in a sense, an irritating subject to lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, even for example, this one girl that I used to work with, she is extremely strong-headed. What's the word I'm looking for? Stubborn. We've had actually many conversations about the things that we've talked about tonight, and within 5 minutes, she is like cussing mad, just furious, and the conversation ends. She'll tell me, I think you are great people. You are wonderful. I'm still going to be your friend. I just don't want to talk about this anymore. And I'm like, but how can you say that you think we're wonderful people and the things that I feel makes us who we are, you can't stand? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So I don't really know how to respond to that.
What does it indicate about people when they get so irritated about a discussion about God, and then other people can have a conversation about God in various ways? For instance, you guys wouldn't mind having some Muslims on and talking with Muslims or Hindus or, just anyone. You guys are open to that. You're not going to hide from that, which we should applaud that. But some people are so focused in on a mindset of God that they can't talk about God in any other context. Why do you think that's so true?
Well, I still think, I started to state last week that it has to do with our viewpoint of God. If we view him as being very thin-skinned and sensitive and quick to anger and things of this nature, not only are we does a person become afraid to say anything that might be offensive to him, but we are trying to be like that. I mean, the goal is to be like him, and if that's our viewpoint of him, then we're succeeding when we get upset and angry when someone speaks something that is considered to be against his character or might offend him, or so forth.
I think that if our goal should be with people, if we can get them to bring God down to our level instead of us trying to rise to his, just bring him down and say, he's just as personable as we are. I mean, he fashioned us, he created us, or whatever you want to say. I'm tired of saying that we need to be just like him. I mean, apparently we have a lot of similarities because he created us. I mean, we're already like him. That doesn't mean that he's sick. We have sicknesses, we have problems that we try to get over, but I don't know. I'm tired of God being this far off being, this far off idea. I mean, I don't know. We need to learn to relate with one another
Very close,
on this
personal.
level. The way I relate with you, the way I relate with you, the way we relate with you, Dr. Jones.
Right.
That's how I want to relate God to people, or at least show them that's how he is. Our relationship is this way.
Stephen,
not
I
that
hate to
way.
cut this short. I'm face to face with our executive producer, and
Uh-oh.
we are overtime right now.
He's tough.
Yeah,
he
he
is
texted me,
tough.
wrap it up 3
And so
minutes ago.
I would like to have this conversation with you guys next week. Can we do this next week on your show? Because I want to talk about whether a lot of these things are psychological problems, theological problems. What are they? Because you have people everywhere who are not willing to talk. They get upset, easily offended, and all of that. Can we have that conversation?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, you guys dismissed. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being on.
And I want to thank our viewers for joining us. We'll see you next week.